Thanks for joining, everyone. I'm Ray Yang. I lead our enterprise product strategy for financial services. Prior to Perplexity, I spent most of my career building tools for investors and being an investor myself. So really glad to be kind of running the demo today and giving you kind of an overview of what you can do with Perplexity for financial workflows. I will go ahead and share my screen.
Maybe a quick poll in the chat. Does anyone here have they not used Perplexity before? It's
Good
okay if you
question.
haven't. This will help us gauge if we should go deeper into some details or maybe give a bit more of an introduction. Has anyone not used Perplexity before? I will take an empty chat as folks are familiar. So maybe we can just dive into some use cases.
We could wrap up earlier. Maybe we don't need to do the demo after all. But appreciate
No.
if
We're
anybody.
here for a reason.
This is meant to be interactive. So to the extent folks have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat as I'm going through these workflows. And Jenny or Jason will make sure that to get flagged and we can answer them in real time. Well, given that it seems like most folks are familiar with the Perplexity platform already, I will just give a very high-level overview and we can jump straight into the demo. So at a high level, I think one of the kind of main questions we get about Perplexity is how does it differ from some of the other AI tools that exist in the market today? And we're going to cover that today, but as a quick overview, some of the features that really kind of stands out for Perplexity are the different types of search modes that you can access within the platform. So today I will primarily be running the demo out of Perplexity's Comet browser, where you can access the Omnibox in order to type in a query. But to the extent that you are not using Comet yet, you can see a similar interface just by using the Perplexity app on mobile or desktop and entering the same prompt into the input field in the middle of the page here. As I was saying, there's a few different types of searches that you can perform with Perplexity that you can't get elsewhere. So our simple search is when you want the answer to a question and you just want to get there really quickly. This is going to be the fastest response for fast answers to everyday questions. Research is our deep research mode where you are going to call on more computational resources in order to perform kind of a longer search and produce a longer report-based output on a specific topic. And then lastly, labs is a third type of query that you can use when you want to generate non-text outputs. So we'll go over a few examples of what that looks like, but again, another kind of unique type of query that you can perform within Perplexity. One last thing before I jump into the demo. So as you probably are aware, Perplexity is not an AI model company, but what we do have is access to all of the latest frontier large language models, which you can access within one subscription. So if you wanted to use Claude Sonnet 4.5 for one query, but GPT-5 for another, you have the ability to select between all of those different types of models just by going and clicking the model toggle here under search. What we found is that a lot of our users are actually just trusting us to be the orchestrator for which model to use for what certain queries. And we expect this trend to continue just because having to think about which query to use, or what model to use for which query is a lot of friction. So we've kind of taken that away from the experience, and you can simply just toggle on best and have Perplexity decide which model is going to work best for the type of query that you're asking.
Nice. Maybe one more thing on, I'm gonna call out the sources.
Yeah, the sources, good call. The sources toggle is where you as a user can dictate the corpus of data that you want Perplexity to search across. So I should mention that Perplexity first and foremost started as a search company. And so We've done a lot of work to make sure that search is fast and accurate by grounding the results in citations that we find either in our web index when you have that toggled on, or other bodies of content. Like for today's discussion, as an example, I may want to toggle on the finance toggle in order to point Perplexity towards SEC filings. And that leverages a direct integration that Perplexity has with Edgar. So when you want to pull information from a 10K or a 10Q, you can have that option toggled on before you perform your search.
Nice. I know someone's asking, looks like someone's asking about FactSet and Crunchbase data. You might have seen some external connections in the sources tab. Can you share a little bit more about like which data we have from those two providers and how often is it updated?
Yeah, it's a good question. So financial services is a really important vertical for Perplexity. And in order to be kind of a platform that has aggregated the information you need to perform the analysis within financial services, we've gone out of our way to make direct connectors with a few what we consider premium data vendors. So those vendors include FactSet and Crunchbase for the time being. So with FactSet, you will be able to query against the historical M&A precedent transaction data as well as live transcripts from their database currently. And we're actively expanding that connector to include more data sets like their fundamentals and estimates data sets and pulling that information directly into Perplexity. Same thing with Crunchbase. You'll be able to access private company information if you have an account with Crunchbase. I will mention that these connectors are only available to enterprise customers. And so you will need to kind of OAuth into those other vendors through a sign-in flow via Perplexity, but they are not available on an individual plan.
Maybe we can dive in to maybe deep research.
All right, let's do it. So I'm going to pull up an example that I had just asked Perplexity this morning. And the reason I'm going to do this now is just to save us some time because it can take, 3 to 4 minutes for the results to pull up when you perform a deep research query. In fact, you know what? We'll do one live just so you can see what the experience kind of looks like. So if I copy that prompt, I select deep research and I hit go, you'll see that unlike a typical kind of search where you're going to get the answer immediately, when you toggle on the deep research feature, it's going to take 2 to 3 minutes to gather resources, to plan out kind of this chain of thought, as we call it, and then provide a report at the end of it on this specific topic that you've asked it. So we'll jump to the answer here because I've already pulled that up. But for this particular prompt, I've asked it to give me an outline of all previous government shutdowns, very kind of relevant right now if you're based in the United States, like a lot of us, how long they've lasted, economic impact, and identifying, the potential effects to the current shutdown. So you'll see here that in this particular output, it is quite long, much longer than you're going to expect from a simple query. And you'll probably also notice that you've gotten a few visual elements in the report as well. So our customers in financial services, whether that's Bridgewater on the public market side or Carlyle on the private market side, they are using Perplexity to generate these reports that would take an analyst, maybe a day or two to put together because they have to go to the sources manually. We're able to construct that very quickly and pull in all of the sources from whichever kind of pool of data that you want to search across. So right now, I just have the kind of default web index selected. So we're going to be pulling in information from top news sources like ABC or Politico and CBS. But again, you can point Perplexity towards specific sources of information if your workflow demands it. Now, I wanted to walk through kind of a couple of the tabs here that you're going to see in every response. So the first tab is always going to be the main output, right? So this is the main deliverable. This is something that you can export into a PDF that you can analyze and click into further. And of course, look at the various citations after each snippet. So you know exactly where the information is coming from. Right. And so you can also actually even highlight, you know, a certain section of the response and click check sources in order to have Perplexity look into exactly where that snippet is coming from. The second tab in the results is assets. So this is an easy way to keep track of all of the backups, whether that's in Python or CSV, as well as the charts and visuals that you're going to see in your report. So if I wanted to copy this chart as an example and drop it into a presentation or just send this visual via email, you have the option to do that right here. See if there's any questions about this one before I move on here.
Someone was asking if we can add in sources into the visuals. That has been feedback shared before, and we are working on it. So thanks so much for the feedback. And speaking of sources, what I use a lot personally is just hovering over. We always do our best to share them wherever we can in line. But if you want to do a deeper dive, for example, maybe it's like, yeah, maybe one of the bullets down here of if you can highlight over a piece of text, you can either add that to your follow-up to say, hey, I want to zero in on this part of the query, or you can check for more sources. So I saw there were two buttons there. If you want to highlight over one more thing, yep, and then you can check sources, and then it'll pull up on the side all the different sources for that line. And that is where our bread and butter is of being able to access live information that's shared on our index. So you have the most reliable sources at hand.
Yeah, and one of the benefits of using a tool like Perplexity is that once the report is produced, that's kind of not the end of it, right? I mean, you can dive into a particular subject that is covered in the report by asking a follow-up question and, you know, specify the type of, you know, you might want to create a report on a specific part of this report, right? So you can really kind of go quite down the rabbit hole here on any topic that you want to get smart on and use Perplexity as a thought partner there to either initiate kind of some of the analysis or produce an output to kind of export and share.
Someone was asking about sharing. So there are maybe a quick thing on an enterprise license. You can share queries specifically with your org. You can make things public, but let's say you're working on a specific research project or deal with a teammate, you can easily organize that. We can share spaces in a little bit, but wanted to call that one out too. And then Ray, let me know when you get to labs because we got some good ideas popping up in the chat and channel.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's jump into labs, and I wanted to cover one use case before we get some feedback from the audience here. So like I mentioned, the labs query is really useful when you want to create a non-text output. And this could be in the form of like an Excel output that you want to dump into a financial model, or it could be some of the visual elements that we were looking at before, which can be useful for creating presentations in PowerPoint or PDF or what have you. So in this particular example, something that we see our users do quite a lot is use Perplexity as a way to extract information from financial documents and then put that into an Excel. So if you think about what the kind of current way of doing this without AI is, you would have to go into the last 8-10 Qs and manually find the CapEx table and then make sure that the tables are the same ones, right? A copy of the information across the last 8 quarters into Excel manually. So that can take, I don't know, a couple of hours if you're good at it. But now that we have these AI tools, we can automatically tell Perplexity what we're looking for. It'll identify those tables, pull up the underlying sources from the SEC, so you have full confidence where they're coming from, and present all the information to you either in a report or in kind of a table here. So in this particular example, I'm just simply asking it to pull the information into an Excel, and if you go to the assets page, you will be able to access all of the backups in Excel. And so here is just our visual representation of the data that has been captured, right? Which quarter it's coming from, and the sources that is coming from. So this is something that I, personally would have found really useful as an investment banking analyst back in the day, just to give my team a backup of where I'm pulling all the information from, right? A lot of the work is to make sure that you're pulling information from the right source. And I think Perplexity saves you a ton of time when you're trying to perform that particular function. So after you have collected all of the information from the documents, you'll then be able to download it into an Excel, and that could be used for a model, or it can be used for just other analysis. So I'm just going to share it real quick just so you can see what it came up with. So you know that I'm not making things up, and you can see it's formulated everything in the format that we were just looking at, and it has some notes as well around where it is coming from.
And really quickly, Ray is showing you something that we haven't necessarily released to our customers just yet. This is coming soon, the ability to create PowerPoints, Excels, documents even, and to export it into an Excel, PowerPoint, etc. So stay tuned. It's going to be coming quite shortly, but this is going to be so helpful for maybe your analyst takes a little bit too much time, Ray. I don't know how quick you were back then, but this is super easy to grab information and also do a double check on what information you're getting it from.
Yeah, and something we'll cover later, the benefit of doing or using these AI tools is that you can run multiple queries at the same time, right? So as good as you were as an analyst, you could only do one thing at a time. At least that was the case for me. But with Comet and with Perplexity, you can ask the tool to pull CapEx, to pull other line items at the same time, put it all together in a model while you are having a cup of coffee or doing something else. So you can greatly, amplify the rate of productivity when you use these tools effectively to do some of the more, what I'll consider time consuming and mundane aspects of the job. All right, I'm going to move us quickly here through a couple of other examples from our customers, actually, and then, yeah.
Can I add one more request?
Sure.
Someone was asking about what's the best way to go, something about regression analysis. I can't find the question, but maybe you can share best practices on that type of query.
Sorry, I don't think what type of query did you say?
Like regression analysis, I think it's referring to like a specific historical stock, understanding in the past few years. I mean, a lot of
Got
what
it.
you can do is like, hey, I'm interested in this period of time for these specific stocks. please help me model out what it would look, the regression analysis looked like historically.
Got it. Why don't we run one live? And we can check on the output in a couple of minutes, because I think we'll want to utilize a labs query for that one, because we're going to want to create a chart. So maybe we want to look at the correlation between, you know, Facebook's capital expenditures versus its revenue growth over the last 3 to 5 years. So and I will make sure to toggle on the finance toggle because I want it to look at SEC filings. I will have Perplexity go and perform that analysis and see what it comes up with.
Nice, thanks.
All right. In the meantime, while Perplexity is off doing that thing, we can do something else. So here are a few examples from some of our customers that they found useful. So one of the features of these AI tools is that there is a little bit of spontaneity in the answers. And when you are using the tool for idea generation or discovery, that can be a huge plus. So I wanted to demonstrate that particular workflow by introducing a concept for the enterprise product called Spaces. So Spaces is our attempt to create a multiplayer kind of environment within our product set. So you can create a space, share it with your team members, and then work collaboratively on a set of shared prompts for a given space. So within this particular space, I can add in a set of overarching instructions, and any follow-on prompts that I add or input within the space is going to follow these overarching instructions. And that can be really useful when you are covering a specific industry, right? So all of the prompts are related to a particular topic, or you wanted to reference a particular document, or you just want the output to always look the same. So in the settings here, I can stipulate, hey, always show these three parts within the report, or always refer to, the output in a specific tone. So to kind of go back to the example that I had before, if we look at the custom instructions here, so this was one that was being used by some folks in investment banking. So they kind of dictated the persona here. Hey, you're an experienced investment banking associate. I want you to help me produce a M&A deck for a senior banker, right? And they outlined that they want, these 4 or 5 sections included in the output, and then also describe the kind of tone and format for the report. Once you've created the space, all of the prompts and queries for that space will be saved just kind of underneath here. And you always have the option to make these threads public. So if you created a thread that you found particularly useful, you could easily share that with other people in the space, and they can kind of dive in and kind of make edits to that as well, ask follow-up questions. And it's a really good way to kind of just have your team swarm on a specific subject by sharing that thread. So here is an example of a prompt within that space, right? So you'll notice here that once you've created the overarching space and given the space some instructions, you can keep your prompts fairly short. So for this one, I've simply said, hey, give me some M&A targets for Chime. So Chime recently went public. They have some new currency to make acquisitions with, and I would like some examples of what companies we should look further into. So you'll see here that the report follows those overarching sections that I outlined for the report. So it starts with an executive summary. It's going to cover strategic rationale, market dynamics, and then go into the specific acquisition targets, right? So for Chime. It's listed a few neobanks, which I think makes sense, as well as some more kind of brokerage, neo brokerage kind of type of companies. And because we've leveraged the labs query, you'll see that it is not only producing the report, but some visual elements as well in the form of these charts and graphs. And I'm sure there will be some backups as well in Excel that we can download and export and play around with in a spreadsheet if we wanted to.
You could even ask Perplexity when this feature is live to turn this report into a PowerPoint. Those charts and these tables will also be imported as well. Can I chime in with a couple of pro tips, Ray?
You can absolutely chime in. That is a great segue.
So Ray showed all the different tabs of a query earlier, and I personally love looking at the steps because you can go through all the thinking that Perplexity is doing. And when you look at the steps, you're kind of like, sometimes you want to go more specific. You know, what I love about Spaces is that you don't have to put in all the instructions every single time. But when you look at the steps, you can kind of look at like how it's thinking. And if you either want it to go deeper in a particular area or just say like, hey, like you did this step and that really wasn't necessary, this is where you can have ideas to refine your prompt even further. So if there's a specific way that your team likes to research, or if there's a specific output, this is super helpful of understanding where it can go deeper into. And then what recently released, not so recent anymore, I think it's a few months, if you want to go into the main page, Ray, you could just go to like the homepage of Perplexity.
Oh,
I
okay.
love adding the space at, and you can just at whatever space you use often, maybe M&A targets. Those are tabs. I think you just added the tab because we're in Comet.
Oh.
But you can add a space, you can add M&A. Yep,
There we go.
exactly. And then you can put in your company. So for example, I know someone mentioned prospect research earlier, or even account planning. You can create a space for account planning, enter in the customer name, and it'll output everything out. So no more having to navigate to spaces, my space, like the my spaces and account planning spaces. You can just add whatever you want to look for in the homepage or even in the Comet sidebar assistant, which we'll get into later, and pull it up. Okay, I saw some questions of like, what's Comet? What can you do with Comet? Someone just downloaded it too. I know folks are asking like, hey, do you integrate with XYZ? There's so much great data out there. There's so many great platforms, and we also, financial services is a big vertical of ours, but we also want to make sure that we could give our customers access to the context of wherever they're working. And that's why we built Comet. Ray has some pretty nifty examples of what Comet can do and what he wished he had when he was an analyst. Ray, you want to share some tricks that you have up your sleeve?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I want to start by saying that I've been using Comet this whole time. So if you're not familiar with Comet, Comet is the browser, and we've kind of embedded Perplexity's AI search directly into Comet, right? So you can type a query directly into the Omnibar, just like you were going to type a web address, and you can access kind of the search pretty much anywhere in your browsing experience. You also have the ability to open up a side panel assistant. I've gotten accustomed to the shortcut, which is just option A, but you can access it here in the top right. And again, this is really helpful when you are, for example, reading through a 10K and you might want to ask a question about that particular document. You can open up the side panel, highlight some text, and ask some questions about that. So let's just look at what that looks like, just so we have an idea. So I'll go ahead and pull up a 10Q that we were looking at before. right? I will open my assistant and let's do some analysis, right? So maybe we want to first and foremost ask Comet, um, uh, always want to know what management is saying at each quarter. So I've gone ahead and asked Comet to first summarize some of the MD&As, the management discussion analysis portion of the document, pull it up here for me to look at while I'm looking at the financial statements. So it makes the browsing experience way more higher bandwidth because you can kind of look at one thing while doing something else with your AI assistant and really get all of your questions answered in real time without having to switch context. So I can be analyzing certain things within the income statement while asking questions about, a different section in the report and interacting with the AI in a way that I'm getting information from both places. I think
Um,
having the, oh, go ahead. Was there a question?
I'll chime in after. Please continue.
Yeah, I think having the sidebar, it feels like a small thing because when you use it, it feels so seamless. But being able to access an assistant in any browsing experience, I think really is quite game changing. You can imagine watching a video on YouTube and wanting to ask a question about the video. You can do that within the side panel. Reading a document we've already covered. You might want to have this open when you're giving a presentation as an example, right? And having it answer questions as you're interacting on a Zoom meeting. So it really is a helpful thing to have on the side. And like with the other Perplexity products, you also have the ability to reference things within the browser. So that could be a specific tab, right? So if I say, hey, reference this tab that I have open and do something with it, like let's say I had a few different um, tabs open. I'm just going to open a couple extra 10 Qs to make the point here. And I go back to where I was before,
Oh,
and I'm
maybe
going to go
you
ahead.
can consolidate numbers into a table
Oh,
from all
yeah,
these different
smart.
10 Qs. That'd be cool.
Yeah, let's do it. Consolidate. I forgot to ask it to do it in a table, but it'd probably do it anyway. So let's see what it comes up with.
And if it doesn't, it's almost like you can always clarify within the thread. So when assistant is pulled up, it'll have access to the previous queries, and then it'll refine answers for you. So while we're pulling that up, Ray, I know we have a few more minutes. I want to make sure we get some time for questions, but we really only showed like the ability to search for answers. We haven't even showed some of the agentic portions. Someone was
mm,
asking about daisy chaining. I love that term because you're a lot about, we really have designed Perplexity about like how you work with an AI versus just prompting it and getting information. So we have the first part of the information, right? You get you're researching whatever specific queries you want, but someone was asking, hey, can I send this in an email now? And that is something you can ask Comet to do. So maybe you have a query pulled up, you're asking questions about your 10Q, you did get the table of the revenue consolidated year over year, quarter over quarter. You can ask Comet to send an email to a teammate or a specific teammate or external individual and say, hey, can you please draft up an email, let them know what type of research I did, include the query, and send it off. And sometimes it'll confirm with you to say, are you sure you want me to do this? Does this copy look good? You can give it instructions of, hey, don't ask for my approval, go ahead. I personally like, double checking, especially if I'm sending it to external folks. But for example, what Ray's pulling up is they're identifying, maybe didn't good thing we don't have all the attendees for the sake of PII, Ray, but you
Yeah, I just
could
asked, yeah, for my
you
coworkers
could
only. Yeah.
upload a list of folks and ask it. I love asking Perplexity to enrich information for me that I don't have access to. Maybe you want to try asking to send out, like, draft up an email.
Yeah. So I could have included this in the initial prompt. I think that was the concept of daisy chaining that you guys were talking about. But I did want to call out one thing as it's working on that. So because you are logged into this browser, we have a lot of context about kind of some of the other connectors that I mentioned that you're not going to get unless you're using our own browser, right? So for example, it's connected to my calendar. It knows that I had this webinar today. It can see who was on that meeting, and I've asked it to specifically look for coworkers, and it can draft an email because it's connected to my Gmail, and it'll be able to kind of send that for me automatically because it's connected, and I can kind of give it a confirmation once it's finished drafting up the message here.
Actually, as of 2 weeks ago, you can read from your calendar and email without using the browser, but it won't be able to execute agentic actions on behalf of you. For example, sending out emails, rescheduling. But one thing that I love doing is, hey, prep me for my day tomorrow. Tell me all the interactions that I have and that I've had with the individual historically to prep me, or even like what's some news about time that I should know going into a conversation with their head of finance. Another example. So feel free to, I guess, like when in doubt, try it out is what I always suggest. If you wonder, like, hey, can Perplexity do this? Try it out with Comet.
Yeah, a helpful prompt that you might want to utilize sometimes is kind of the phrase "take over my screen." And so, but because we're kind of demonstrating some of these agentic features, a lot of times information is presented in a way that's not easy to copy and paste. And when you're presented with a situation like that, using Comet to kind of act almost as a human would to read the information, extract it, and then put it in another source is something that we've found a lot of users doing, and forcing Comet, so to speak, to take over your screen and do the hard work is something that you can experiment with as you're playing around with Comet. So here, coming back to the example with the email, you can see we've embedded some of the functionality like email and other things directly into the thread response. So if I wanted to send the email that I had it drafted up before, I can go ahead and press send, and it knows that this is my coworker that I wanted to send an email to. So a lot of this kind of personalization and context that you get by, asking questions and connecting your calendar is something that we're continuing to build on top of, and you should hopefully be surprised by what Perplexity can do going forward.
Someone asked, what do Max users get that regular enterprise or even consumer users don't get? We also release our new products to Max users earlier, beyond unlimited labs queries, having access to enhanced LLMs or like maybe thinking models. We recently released an email assistant. Ray, I know you were eager to share that. It's a bit tough to demo because maybe what we can do is we can pull up the website. If you head over to Assistant,
Hmm.
if I can spell it correctly, yes, maybe you can go to this page instead. I just dropped it in the the chat, but we built out an assistant to better help manage your calendar. So it's accessible both with Gmail and Outlook. The three main things, one, my favorite thing it can do is actually help me schedule meetings for me. So instead of doing the back and forth, checking my calendar, you can CC in assistant at perplexity.com and it'll find time for you with the other individual and put it on the calendar. Super helpful, especially when you're juggling with a bunch of different things on the day-to-day. It can help label your emails of understanding what's a cold email, what do you need to respond to, what's just an FYI. And it also can understand your tone and draft up replies for the emails that are labeled as to respond. It's gotten pretty good and can learn from a lot of context in your conversations. But I also want to highlight that this is also built on the infrastructure that is also SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. Right, any other use cases that you like using Assistant for?
I think you covered it. I will just emphasize that the folks that are on the email thread with you can also trigger assistant. So it really just operates like a human assistant would, right? So let's say you have a meeting set up and for whatever reason, a week later, the other attendees on the meeting need to move something around. They can actually, just respond to the thread and have the assistant take over and you don't need to do a thing, right? It is acting as an assistant would to find new times, look at your calendar, and correspond with the other attendees like a person would. So that's kind of what you're seeing here in this this visual. And so again, this is saved me a lot of time. I just CC assistant in any scheduling emails that I have now and have it take over to schedule times on my calendar.
We got through a lot today. A lot of questions, a lot of excitement. I want to make sure there's maybe a few minutes if anyone else has any questions. Another release that maybe if you didn't catch Perplexity Finance is now available on mobile. I know a lot of folks here really like using the dashboard, tracking and following certain stocks, but you can now access that on mobile. You could either type in the ticker or type in finance in mobile and highlight it. Connecting prompts. How do we know when to use Claude versus? So Ray mentioned earlier on being able to toggle best. We've built in a classifier within Perplexity to best understand what are you trying to understand and what is the best prompt to use for it. Like we believe that models, they're going to get better. And that's why we really want to focus on building out a great index to capture all the relevant information that you need. So if you know, and you really like, let's say like GPT thinking for research, you can go toggle that, but that's why, because these models are always evolving, you can just rely on Perplexity to choose the best one for you. Oh, people are asking what the result of the regression analysis is.
Oh yeah, let me pull that up.
I'll also be sharing these examples that Ray pulled up today.
Okay.
So there's some trends.
Yeah, not quite what I was looking for, but actually there we go. Yeah, it's looking at the R squared. It is a weekly negative correlation. So more capex does not always mean more revenue growth, despite what Zuck might tell you. So that is actually pretty on point.
We got a nice, thank you. And again, if there are specific things that you don't see in a prompt, you can always follow up with specifics. For example, if they didn't plot, let's say for whatever reason, Perplexity didn't plot that regression line mapping it to revenue, you can then specifically ask it. Yep. And then assets tab, you can always download it. And then soon when we release the assets of being able to build out Excel, PowerPoint, and documents, you will also be able to download those files as well. So just a sneak peek for the folks who joined today. Any other questions before we wrap up? Royer is asking what's the best feature. It's kind of hard to
I think,
answer.
yeah, I don't know if there's one particular feature that jumps out. I think the email assistant is something that I find myself using a lot, but I think more and more you'll see that we are kind of building new surface areas where you can leverage the AI capabilities in your daily workflow, and it just feels seamless. The browser was kind of the most recent example of that, where now I'm using the sidebar and I don't even think about it, right? Just being able to ask a question about the content I'm reading or whatever browser experience I'm in has really kind of changed the way that I interact with the internet. So I just encourage you to experiment, right? Try all the different AI tools, try the different models, and really kind of one of the benefits of using Perplexity is that we give you all this optionality, so you can see firsthand, hey, if I leverage a Claude model versus an OpenAI model, what is going to be the differences in the outputs that I want to generate, and over time you can um, select the model that works best for you.
And as a reminder, all the contracts we have negotiated and signed that we have with these model providers, we do not have our enterprise customers' data trained on their LLMs ever. And that is, I know a lot of folks are asking, what's the difference between pro and enterprise? There are things that you may or may not want others to know, to be trained on, and we have that guarantee of when we partner with these LLMs, they are not trained on. I know we went over a few minutes. If you did not get your answer asked or question answered, if you wanted to see another demo, please send them our way, or even just ask Perplexity, try it with Perplexity. Again, when in doubt, try it out. I really appreciate the participation today. Ray, thanks so much for jumping in and covering for Nat. Nat, I hope you feel better. And thanks so much for all the love and support, and please keep those questions coming. I hope you all have a wonderful day. For those who are in New York, enjoy the weather today. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.